Then in 2018, I had my daughter. And when I had her, they discovered I had heart failure. And so I couldn't work regular hours anymore. I just had good days and bad days. And while I was dealing with living with that diagnosis and raising my daughter, I got invited to a book party.
Welcome to the Other 99% podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Duck, a coffee-loving direct sales enthusiast who's obsessed with a good digital system. Come join me for a realistic look into the world of direct sales. We'll explore inspiring perspectives, learn about unique business tips, and celebrate success stories that often go untold. Because on the Other 99%, every seller matters. Hey everyone, it is me, Lisa, and welcome back to another episode of the Other 99%. I am super excited to be here today with my friend Casey, who I have met again through the Modern Direct Seller. You're going to hear that on repeat for the next little bit because all of my Modern Direct Seller peeps, they're coming out and joining me in this podcast, which I am loving. So, welcome, Casey. I'm so excited that you're here. I know this is a new thing for you. You're coming a little bit out of your comfort zone here and joining us on the podcast. But I want you to jump in and tell the listeners a little bit about you, sort of what your life looks like and what it looked like before you joined direct sales, and just give us any deets that you want to give us.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Casey, and I have been with Paper Pie for 3 years, and I've loved every minute of it. The journey to get here was kind of a long one. Originally, I went to grad school and was a librarian, and I worked in an academic library for several years. And then in 2018, I had my daughter. And when I had her, they discovered I had heart failure. And so I couldn't work regular hours anymore. I just had good days and bad days. And while I was dealing with living with that diagnosis and raising my daughter, I got invited to a book party from an old friend and reconnected with her. And that was back in 2018. And I loved the book so much that I just kept having parties and purchasing, and she kept pursuing me gently over the years. And fast forward to 2022, I sat down with my husband one night and I told him that I just loved the books and I wanted to buy a kit. And my husband is a businessman himself. He owns his own business, so he thinks very logically. And he said, well, this kit cost $100. So if you can make your money back in 6 months, then you can do this business thing. I was like, you're on. I'll take that bet. And so here I am 3 years later and still chugging along.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you loved the books, you fell in love with the books, and that's basically what attracted you to Paper Pie. And for those listening, Paper Pie up here in Canada would be Usborne Books, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So knowing that you love the books, let's just dig in. Do you have a favorite?
Yes. My husband laughs at me because my favorite book that they have in the collection is called Not Your Everyday Thesaurus. Out of all the wonderful chapter books and picture books and things that they have, my favorite book is a thesaurus. And I love it because I love words. I love word games, play on words. I love learning new words. And this book, just the way it lays it out in a fun way and an engaging way for not only kids, but adults. I keep it at my desk and I use it. It just makes me happy.
Awesome. I'll have to take a peek at that. I'm always looking for different words to use. So
It's fun.
all right. Now this question might hit home for a lot of our listeners. So I want you to be as open and honest about this as possible. But was there ever a moment in your business? So you said you've been in business for 3 years. Has there been a moment where you've thought about quitting? And if there has been, what's kept you going? What's kept you in the business?
Yes, I've had moments. I've had to learn to get a thicker skin and to not take rejection so personally and so hard. Um, and there are seasons when there's a lot of that. And my husband actually, he is a lot of um, my motivation and inspiration because he builds businesses and does this every day. And I see um, his resilience. And he tells me, when I get into my feelings, because I can do that, he'll say, don't quit on a bad day. And so
Mhm.
I try to keep that in mind and to keep my emotions in check.
Yeah. I always think about this one phrase or a quote, or I don't know if it's really a quote because I don't know who really said it, but someone once said in a training that I was listening to that you should never quit your business unless you have a full calendar. Because if your business, you can truly decide whether the business isn't for you if you've worked it. Most people will want to quit when they're having those bad days, those lulls in the booking. And that just means that you're going through a growth spurt, going through growth periods. So, you know, the only time that you can quit is if your calendar's full.
Yeah.
And that's it. Think about it that way. And you got to keep trucking along. Just keep doing it because if anything well, 2024 has shown us that this industry can throw you curveballs. I
Oh,
mean, and
yes.
you just have to go with the flow, right? I
Yes.
mean, yeah. And that leads me right into my next question. Is there, what's the biggest thing that has surprised you about being in the direct sales business? Like what stands out?
Um, the biggest thing that surprised me has been people's perception and how misguided and miseducated people can be because I was one of those people for so long. That's why I loved the products and I was a customer for so long because I had my own misconceptions about the business model. And it wasn't until I signed up and took my husband's bet and worked it and tried and got in it and got into the community and the mission and the heart behind the people and the relationships. Um, I was like, wow, this is not what I thought it was at all.
Mhm. So thinking about that, you said that you had that misconception before you started the business. So thinking about back then, prior to Casey starting in her direct sales business, what's one piece of advice that you would give the Caseys out there about starting?
I would say put people first. Um, because if your intention and your heart is to just serve others, the rest will come. Before I started, I my thought was, oh, this person just wants to sell me something, or this person just wants to sign me up, and then I'm just a number, or I don't mean anything to them other than that. But what I've seen is that we do care about people, and when we show people that we care about them as people first, everything else takes care of itself. The way you treat people is what's attractive and the value that you bring to the table. Even if I'm standing in line with three or four other paper pie representatives, we all bring something different to the table and have a different way of working our business, but we all shine because the mission is to spread literacy and learning and
Hmm.
to put kids and families and people first.
I love that. Okay, so I know that we're both in the Modern Direct Seller Academy.
Yeah.
I know that we are, both Oh My High users, which is our own branded website. So that being said, is there a specific strategy or tool that you use in your business that you think has transformed the way you run your business over the last little bit?
Yeah, I think it's twofold for me. One is the Modern Direct Seller Academy, and just the community that I have there. I'm not alone. I'm not doing this alone. And that I have motivation, encouragement, people speaking truth and telling me do the things that you don't feel quite ready to do. Be brave. So that's one. The other thing is more practical. I'm a digital calendar user,
Hmm.
and Google Calendar just wasn't cutting it for me. And I found Artful Agenda last year,
Hmm.
and you can make lists, you can color code things. There's so much you can do with it. And because I'm not only working my paper pie business, but I'm running my household and family, I'm helping my husband with his businesses and have bookkeeping and different things. Like I can keep everything in one space
Hmm.
and look at all of it clearly. And it's just really served me well.
And it's pretty.
Yes, yes,
I love pretty things and I love digital things. So yes, Artful Agenda is definitely right up my alley. I
yeah.
totally agree with you there.
And they came out with a habit tracker in the last part of 2024.
Don't we all
Um,
need a habit tracker? As
and I use it for so many things. I'm using it now with my daughter. I've challenged her. She's almost 7, and I say, okay, well, if we read for 15 minutes together every day for or 25 days in a row, basically, or 25 days this month, we'll go to Defy Gravity in February. Defy Gravity is one of the jump zones that
hmm
she loves to go to. And we've marked the little bubble in my Artful Agenda. And that visual, she loves to see that. So it's been really helpful.
That's awesome. Yes, Laurel was on the call with us yesterday. We had a quick chat yesterday, and she's in like, "Hi," like all excited, and I had to giggle when you told her that I was from Canada, and her face was like, "Wow, I just
Yeah.
met a Canadian," or it made me feel kind of special. It's like that's
And when we
awesome.
hung up, she was like, Daddy, I went to Canada.
That's so cool. All right, so my next question is, so you like 3 years in the business. Thinking back to when you started, is there one thing that you could see that you might do differently that you might tell other direct sellers that make sure you look into this because you might want to up your game by doing this when you start your direct sales business? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think when I first started, I had a lot of thoughts like, oh, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going. The biggest one was I'm never going to do a vendor event or an in-person event. I'm scared and I only want to sit behind the computer. I'm not saying everybody has to do a vendor event, but for me, I needed to get out there and and be brave, put my big girl panties on. And I really enjoyed vendor events and book fairs with preschools and just seeing kids interact and touch the books and look at the books and talking to teachers and talking to parents because I've learned their pain points and what they like, what they don't like, and how I can serve them best. That's not always easy to do if I'm just behind a computer. So, yeah, never say never because this business will grow you and you will change. And if you don't, then you might not be doing it right.
Yeah, I agree. I always tell my team when they join, it's like, you know, you can't say you don't like doing the business that way unless you try it.
Yeah,
You try it once and you're like, not for me, not my cup of tea. Okay, great. But just don't assume that you're not going to like it because we all know what that assume when we break it down what it actually means, right?
yeah, yes.
All right. So I prepped you for this question because I ask it to all of my guests and I want to hear because I'm sure this one is going to be brilliant. So, what is your favorite quote or a piece of advice that you've heard during your direct sales business or career that you think every direct seller needs to hear?
Well, I hate to disappoint you, but I've already told you. Um, people first.
The first.
That's the thing. When you asked me for that, that was what came to mind because that is what encourages me and keeps me going and just putting people first.
Awesome. All right, Casey, this is going to be an easy question for you, but where can people find you in the World Wide Web?
Ah, I have a website on Oh My High and it's called laurelsbookshelf.shop. That's where you
Awesome.
can find me. Laurel's Bookshelf. That's my business name. And laurelsbookshelf.shop.
Awesome. All right. I am sure that our listeners are going to love listening to all your shares during the podcast, and I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the episode. And I look forward to coming back and having you guys listen to another episode of the other 99%. So we'll see you again next week. Take care, everyone. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would take a minute to rate and then review the podcast, I would absolutely love it. And if you know someone who really needs to hear this podcast, please feel free to share it with them. More listeners, the better. And if you know someone who would like to be a guest on the podcast, or you yourself would like to be a guest, be sure to check the link in the show notes or visit lisaduck.com and click Be a Guest. We'll talk to you soon.